Apparel Association.
Okay.
This is Gary Swanson interviewing Sherman W. Dreiseizum for the Kansas City Garment Association. Sherman is a pioneer in the garment industry in Kansas City, and we want to find out what he has to say about it. Sherman, as a young person, where'd you grow up?
Kansas City, Missouri.
You grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. You were born in Kansas City?
Yes, sir.
And raised in Kansas City. What's your birth date?
May 23rd,
What year?
1922.
1922.
I'm 82 years old.
82 years old. And how many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had one brother and 4 sisters.
And what was your brother's name?
Hyman,
Was he younger or older than you?
older. I was the youngest.
You were the youngest of 6 children?
Right.
What was your daddy's name?
Sam.
Sam Dreiseizum. And how about your mother with her maiden
Bertha.
name? Bertha
Pullman, Pullman.
Bertha Pullman. Were both of them born in this country?
No, sir. I was the only one born in this country.
You were the only one born in this country.
Right.
So your mom and dad were married.
Right. They lived in an area that was half the time was Russia, half the time was Poland, along that border.
And today, is it in Poland or Russia, or do you even know? I know it's very common. The border shifted so often
Right.
that nobody really knew.
My dad had 2 brothers, and they came to the United States, and they came to Kansas City. And my dad went back to Europe, and then he came back to the United States, and then he went back and got the family.
So your daddy came over with his brother.
2 brothers.
So there were 3 of them, and then of course he had the family back in the old country,
Right.
5 children.
Right.
I mean, you were the only one born in this country,
Right.
and they came over. That must have taken a lot of courage for them to leave.
I have no idea what kind of courage. All I'm glad is they did it.
Yes, yes, sir. And you don't know what their motivation for coming was.
Motivation for coming was my dad was a watchmaker. Didn't have any work in Europe. Came to the United States, he had work right away.
Small village over there. Was it a small village?
Yes.
Do you know the name of the village?
I can't spell it.
Can you say it?
Can I spell it? Libetne.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
Okay, so they came over, and did your daddy have a job when he brought the family over?
He had
As a watchmaker?
Right.
Had his own shop, or did he work for a...
No, he was working for somebody, and then his 2 brothers were in the millinery business. They manufactured ladies' hats.
His 2 brothers manufactured ladies' hats, and so they said, hey, maybe you ought to come in business with us, something like that? How did it happen?
Didn't happen. They didn't have the skill that he had.
Okay, all right, which is a very interesting raises a very interesting question. Kansas City was a hotbed for garment companies during a certain period of time, and I have you tell me about that. What was the reason there were so many was because there wasn't a huge barrier to entry in terms of knowledge you must have?
Kansas City was mainly known for ladies' coats.
Okay.
They probably were the 2nd largest ladies' coat manufacturer outside the city of New York.
And but
And then we were in the sportswear business.
you were okay.
There were only 3 of us in the sportswear business.
Okay, so we'll jump to that. You went to school. Where'd you go to school here?
Went to Jefferson Grade School,
Jefferson Grade School?
Manual High School.
Manual High School. Did you graduate?
Sure did.
What year was that? 38, 39?
I think it was either 38 or 39.
It was a long time ago.
A long time.
And what'd you do right after you got out of school? Your daddy was a watchmaker.
Forget, my daddy was, when I got out, my dad then opened up a dry goods store.
Retail.
Retail. And from that dry goods store, then he moved it was at 18th and Forest. He moved that dry goods store to, I think it was 18th and Prospect. Then he went into the fish business. I used to go to the Missouri River with him to buy fish from the fishermen. And then he had a beer joint. 26 ounces of beer for a dime. I hate beer. Can't stand the taste of it.
So was that during the period of time after you got out of high school before you went away to war
Yeah.
in World War II?
Right.
So-
Well, I was in junior college, and I graduated from junior college, and I enlisted in the Air Force.
And junior college at that time was downtown.
Then downtown.
So you wouldn't have lived very far from there, or your daddy's business wasn't very
Right.
far from there.
That's
Did you
right.
work for your dad while you were going to junior college?
No, it didn't work for my dad. It worked for my brother and sister, who were. My brother was in the manufactured permanent wave pads. I don't want to get into that.
Okay.
And my sister worked for M.B. Morgan, which was a coat manufacturer, and she worked at 10th and Broadway.
MB or M?
10th and Broadway.
And the name of the company, M?
MB Sportswear, did you say?
No,
MB?
M.B. Morgan.
Okay.
My sister married Max Morgan's younger brother, Morris Morgan, and they had a child, Frank Morgan. That was my nephew. And I'm 3 years older than my nephew. My nephew died
How many years older?
3.
3 years older than your nephew who passed away a few years ago.
He passed away. It'll be 12 years the end of this month.
Okay, so you went to junior college and then you went to war. You
I worked at Vic-Gene before I went to
Vic-Gene
right
was now
manufacturing company, manufactured ladies' sportswear items.
who owned that company?
My sister and brother, and they gave me 20%, so it was 40, 40, 20.
What was your brother's name again?
Hyman,
Hyman, and your sister's name?
Rose.
Rose. And so you went to work for them. Was that before you went to war?
Yes.
Okay, so you're a 20% owner in Vic-Gene.
Right.
Then the war came along. You joined the Air Corps and flew a bunch of missions out of Italy on a B-24 as a gunner. How many missions did you fly?
27.
27, and you came back safely. Just for the record, very quickly, did you ever, you didn't get shot down? Did you make any crash landings other than on the
Yeah,
trip
well,
over there?
On one of the missions to Ploesti, not the low-level mission to Ploesti, but the high-level mission to Ploesti, we lost one engine to flak, then we lost another engine, then we lost another engine. We had only one engine left, and we had 2 Messerschmitts that were trying to shoot us down, and we shot one of them down.
Your plane did.
Yes,
What position were you as a gunner?
waist gunner. I got credit for a half. And the other guy flew away after we shot his partner down.
ME-109s?
Yep. And then we landed. Our pilot was terrific. Of course, we were all 19, 20, and 21 years old. And our pilot was terrific. He says, we're not going to ditch. We ditched once. He called the tower on the island of Viz, which is off the coast of Yugoslavia. It was controlled by the British. And the tower says, we have fighter planes up. You can't land here because there's no place for them to land when they come back. He says, I'm coming in. Whether you tell me I can or not, we're coming in. They finally said, okay, but don't use any brakes. All we had was one engine. So we rolled to the end of the runway and rolled off to the side. He made a perfect landing with one engine, and everybody wanted to know if anybody was hurt. Nobody was hurt. And so they put us up over there. All they did was barter. Everything was bartered. In the morning, they took us to the barber shop, and somebody gave the barber something, and he shaved us. And in the afternoon, they sent a PT boat over to pick us up. And we left the plane there, and that was our second narrow escape.
How high were you when you lost the third engine, and how much altitude did you lose?
We were okay because the one engine maintained the altitude. You know, those were good airplanes. That especially the B-24 is like a boxcar. You know, the B-17 had some lift to it, not the 24. 24 was pretty boxy. You know, all we were going was 150 miles an hour. You know, nothing.
Well, you had to have a good pilot to bring you home, though.
Oh, he was excellent. Everybody loved him. Our bombardier his dad was president of Philco Corporation.
Philco.
He stayed in. He became a colonel. And in the United States, when we were practice bombing, you know, we used to bomb the San Francisco Bridge every day from Riverside, California, fly up, camera bomb the bridge, and you could tell by the way the film was whether you hit it or not. He couldn't hit anything in the United States. All of us were taught how to use that bomb sight, and all of us were better than he was until we got overseas. Got overseas, he couldn't miss. He was, you know, when you go after a bridge, you hit either the beginning of the bridge or the end of the bridge to make the bridge collapse. I don't know how many times he did that. And he became the lead bombardier for the 449th Bomb Squadron, which we were part of.
You were in the 449th Squadron. What bomb group were you in?
That was the 717th of the 449th.
717th Bomb Group, the Bomb Squadron of the 449th Bomb Group of the 15th Air Force.
That's correct.
So, how many missions did you fly again?
27.
You flew 27 missions, and was the war over then?
No, the war was not over.
I mean, you didn't have your missions in.
No, but we were coming back to the United States to go train in B-29s. And we got up to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and good old President Truman dropped the atom bomb.
August the 6th.
That's right. And they announced the point system. Well, I had 90 points. All you needed was 40.
Sure.
So I got out.
So you got out. Now, when you came back after the war,
Right.
you'd done your duty for your country, you came back safely.
Right.
Then what did you do? Did you?
My nephew bought my brother's son had asthma, so they moved to Arizona. So we became a third partners, my sister, my nephew, and myself.
And what was your nephew's name?
Frank Morgan.
Frank Morgan, the one that, the aforementioned Frank Morgan. Okay, and that was Vic, Vic-Gene.
Gene.
Okay, and
We manufactured items.
okay, now, what do you mean items?
Didn't make a whole line. Something was hot, that's what we did. And we had, did you
And
ever
what
see,
year?
did you ever see the Pendleton plaid jacket?
Yes.
Okay.
What plaid jacket?
Pendleton?
Pendleton.
Oh,
plaid-
just sure, certainly. Everybody has.
Well, that's ladies' Pendleton plaid jacket, sold for $17.98. We manufactured and sold it for $6.98. And we got in the Sears catalog, we got in the Ward's catalog, we were in all the Sears stores, we were in all the Ward stores, and
What year are we talking about?
Yeah.
with that?
What year did Vic-Gene get started, and then what year did you and Frank and your sister?
Wait a minute. I got back, I've been married 58 years.
Well, they've been
So,
46.
Okay, 58, got to go back a year before that. So
Yeah, the war was over in 45. You came over in 45.
Right. And we immediately started doing much more business than Vic-Gene ever did before. Then we made a corduroy jacket called the Slick Shirt out of corduroy. We made it, we had 20 colors. And we had that set up with the New York buying office. They put it in all their stores that they represented. And we sent out a sheet every week with they filled in their inventory, and they gave us an order to
Replenish?
replenish. And we replenished it every week.
Well, where was your plant, your manufacturing plant?
1000 Broadway, and we had a plant in Paola, Kansas.
How many people, right after the war, now, when did Vic-Gene first start, to the best of your knowledge?
Long before the war.
1930, 1935?
I don't remember the year.
But it wouldn't have been long before the war, which began in 41, so it would have been in the 30s at the very earliest, or latest, rather, might have been.
Well, say 1940 is good enough.
Okay.
Okay. And so, how many employees did you have right after the war when business exploded?
We had between the two plants, we had about 65 or 70.
And what was your job at that time? I know you owned a third of the joint, but
Right.
what was your job?
My job was to pick orders and ship them. And that was Frank's job. Either one of us packed, the other shipped.
And so, were you running pretty lean and mean?
Oh, we were.
So, I mean, even though you owned the business, you were workers.
That's right.
You were working.
That's right.
And who was the genius in the company
My
picking
sister-
out what it is that you should manufacture?
My sister ran the factories. She ran the factories. Frank and I was in New York every other week. And I sold the stuff. And Frank and I worked on shipping it.
But who was the brains in the company behind
No
the selection of what you're going to make?
No, just.
Well, I mean-
somebody would call us up.
You were taking advantage of what was hot.
Penny company would call us up and say, we've got a two-piece blouse and skirt set. Skirt's got 180 inches. Big skirt, 6-inch hem. We want you to make it for us.
Did you design?
No, it didn't.
You were-
We just knocked everything.
You
off.
were custom manufacturers of knockoffs, like you
That's
said.
right. That's right. Not custom manufacturers. We were manufacturers of knockoffs.
Okay, let's make it short and sweet.
That's right.
So, when did the business really boom then? Was it right after World War II? Is that when Vic-Gene
Yeah,
had its
but
best years?
It's a terrible business because you're never on time if you're hot. So you would get called by assistant buyers, collect. How come you haven't shipped our merchandise? And I had done very well with Gimbel Brothers in Milwaukee and in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. And I was in New York, and I happened to be at the Gimbel buying office when everybody was there. And so the merchandise manager from Pittsburgh said, I want you to come to a meeting that we're having because I think everybody should have what we're doing. So I went, and he had been selling this corduroy slick shirt year round. We just changed colors. He'd been selling it for about a year and a half and selling a lot of them. Gertrude Simon, bless her heart, was the buyer of the New York Gimbel Brothers. And she says to me, I don't pay freight. I said, well, I won't sell you. It's FOB Kansas City. She says, I can have it knocked off. I said, be my guest. You won't have the colors that we have, and that's the whole secret of this whole thing. Finally, she decided she was going to buy it from us. And she decided to run a little 3-inch by 8-inch ad in the New York Times on Sunday. Mail and phone orders welcome. She sold almost 3,600 pieces off of that stinking little ad. And she was on vacation in Florida. And she'd call me every day, says, Sherman, you got to ship. We can only hold these mail orders 4 days. I said, you tell me what you need and we'll get it to you. And that's what happened.
And that's what you did. You gin the plant up and
No,
And got it
somebody
out.
else didn't get shipped, but Gertrude got shipped.
so what's the origin of the name Vic-Gene?
I've got,
She's got
I've
it.
got that.
She's got that. My brother's two sons. One is Jerome Victor, Vic. The other is Herbert Eugene, Gene.
Yeah, makes sense. That makes sense. So you manufactured whatever anybody wanted,
Not whatever. We only looked
whatever
at
you wanted to manufacture that somebody else wanted.
That's right.
Did
We only made items.
Did you pass many deals?
We probably sold probably over 2 million of the Pendleton jacket, and we made it in large sizes, 38 to 44. Charged them an extra half a buck for that, and then we must have sold 4 million corduroy slick shirts.
And you slick shirts, corduroy slick shirts.
S-L-I-C-K.
Okay,
That's what we called it.
what was the biggest year post-war? What was the biggest year that you had?
I think one year we did something like almost $3 million. That was unbelievable.
That was a lot of items, wasn't it?
Right. Was it low priced?
And was that still in the 40s or is that into the 50s?
Oh yeah, because we were out of it. We went it. We luckily got into the shopping center business purely by luck.
Okay, and your major customers then, you represented yourself to your company to the major customers. You did not have salesmen on the road.
Nope.
So you were out in New York.
Sold it all.
You were to the big department stores, big buyers like Penneys, Sears, Ward's, people.
And then you had the buying offices that represented a whole bunch of different stores. And like Mutual Buying Office told all of their clients to put it in. And they put it in on a very limited basis. But each week, the limited basis became larger because they were selling it every single week.
As you analyze it, looking back, what was the reputation of Vic-Gene in the industry?
Nothing. We just made items.
Just some old country boys out in Kansas City making items,
That's it.
selling them to somebody, bumping into people.
And what were some of the other items? Other than the
Very,
slick jacket?
very few. We made, stuff out of denim, but nothing like those two items that I talked
Yeah,
about.
you didn't design, you didn't have seasons, you manufactured knockoffs that your customers wanted from you.
That's correct.
And how long did you stay in business post-war?
We just closed up. Let's see. We built Metcalf South. 30 some odd years ago. So 30 some odd years ago we got out of this business.
So it'd been 1965 roughly or something like that.
Right, we just closed up.
You
We
just,
didn't sell it to anybody, we just closed up.
What made you decide to do that?
A terrible business because everybody's complaining all the time. We were never on time because when you're hot, you're never on time. Everybody wants it. And some of them decided to have it made in New York and didn't sell, and they came back.
were you a union shop at
Yes,
Vic-Gene?
sir, we were.
How were the relations with the Garment Workers Union?
Joe Koralchik from Brown and Koralchik, the law firm, represented all of the apparel manufacturers. And Joe Koralchik passed away about, 8 years ago or so.
And you'd say by and large it was good relations with it because you were united as a garment association.
That is because you have the people in St. Louis who were the kingpins. And I think this guy's name is Pearlstein or something like that, the head of the Ladies Garment Workers Union in New York. And either you joined up or you were going to be out of business.
So once you understand that, you decide you want to be in business, easy decision.
That's correct.
So you just closed it up, and then you went on to other ventures personally. What was there any? What was the secret of your success in the garment manufacturing business? You had great relations with big customers.
Well,
You were opportunists.
all you had to do was find the item and then deliver it and make sure it was done right.
Did you ever initiate any items?
Nope.
It was always when somebody came and said, "Hey,
No, it's something that we kept seeing, and we thought, well, we ought to be making that, and that's how we made it. You know, when Pendleton was selling it for $17.98 and we sold it for $6.98, that's a hell of a difference. And we bought the stuff from the Manna Woolen Mills in Amana, Iowa. They did. I told them the kind of woolens that we wanted. They manufactured it exactly to our specifications, so it was no different than Pendleton's.
So, I mean, is it a fair statement to say that you did have a good reputation, or Penneys wouldn't have come to you? They could have come to some other house.
Penneys didn't come to us. We went to Penneys. Once we went to Penneys in New York, they told us there's a Los Angeles buying office. Go out there and talk to them. So I went out and talked to them, and they said, yeah, if you can deliver, we'll give you orders.
How did you gather information on, how did you decide what was going to be a hot item?
Always, the stores always told us what the hot item was. And if it was selling for $17.98 and we could produce it for $6.98 or $7.98, that was the
So,
difference.
you weren't innovators, you were providers of quality merchandise based on what the customers wanted at that time, and your customers were big accounts, the Macy's, Gimbels, people of that sort, Penneys, and others. So you just closed it down. At the apex of, you had about $3 million worth of business a year. You had about 65 employees in a couple of locations, Paola and Kansas City. And life was pretty good, though it was frantic and hectic because of the demands of the customer. You closed the place down when you
Went
moved
to
into
work
something
at
else.
7 o'clock in the morning, got home at 6 o'clock at night. And that's the secret to the whole thing.
Well, an 11-hour day never hurt anybody.
No,
But it does get old after a while, particularly.
that's when you're young, it doesn't make any difference.
It doesn't.
Where did you have lunch?
We had, for a long time, right across the street at 10th and Broadway, there was Weiss's. Remember Weiss's?
Yes.
Okay. We ate lunch up the street. There was Capel Fabrics. Sam Kaplan owned Capel Fabrics, okay? Frank and I and Sam had lunch every single day as long as we were all in town, every day. Then after Weiss's closed up, we started eating at the airport. We'd go to the airport every day for lunch. And then after they closed up, we went to the Golden Ox. And every day at the Golden Ox, we'd have the same table. No matter what time we came in, that table was there for us.
What was the name of that restaurant across the street from Brandon Purett's to the east on the corner? Do you remember that?
Is that the Talman Grill?
Talman Grill, that's it.
Maury Town.
Did you ever go there?
Sure.
So you went probably everywhere. Now, tell us a little bit about the scope of the garment industry in Kansas City, because
Garment industry, you had, I think, 5 or 6 dress manufacturers. You had about 7 to 9 coat manufacturers.
Let's test your memory. Name those dress manufacturers. Nellie Don.
Well, Nellie Don was big. There was Mendel Silverman. There was, on the coats, there was Rice Coat and Suit. There was Brandon Purett's. There was Youth Craft.
Fashion Bill.
Fashion Belt. That was present, was Fashion Belt.
Stern Slegman made what?
Stern, Slegman, Prince, coats.
Coats.
That's where my sister worked. She, as a floor lady before she went to work for Morgan. Okay?
Okay, and when, in your opinion, was the apex of the Kansas City garment manufacturing? About what year was that, when it was at its height?
hard for me to remember because they started in, like, the last ones to be in business were Fashion Built and Rice. And Youth Craft, I think, had closed down, and Leon Carrison died, and his brother moved to Los Angeles, and I think he was manufacturing or importing. He was importing coats. They stopped manufacturing. They were importing coats, and he was selling them. But see, the big deal was the coat people. We were nothing compared to the coat people.
Did you have any competitors that did what you
Mayfair
did?
Manufacturing Company.
In Kansas City?
Yes.
Who was Mayfair? What was the gentleman's
Jack.
family's name?
What was Jack's last name? Jack Fox.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the race went to the swiftest, the guy who worked the hardest and had the relationships with the customers.
What did you do better
and the
than
bang
Well,
Mayfair?
we sold all the mercantile stores, which is Jones Store, owned by a mercantile at the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a gal in New York by the name of Rose Levine. She was the boss. And I have to go to New York. And finally I told her, I'm tired of you bawling me out all the time. And she says, what do you mean? I said, nobody bawls me out because we do the best we can. And she says, well, I understand you're now a developer, she tells me. I said, that's right, I have a Jones store at Metcalf South. And she says, well, that's the only store I can't buy for because Ronnie Ferguson was president of Jones Store. And he said he didn't want any New Yorkers buying for him. He'll do his own buying. And since he was making the most money for mercantile stores in the chain, they didn't bother him. And Rose Levine didn't like that, but she couldn't do a damn thing about it.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you closed down Vic-Gene, you didn't just all drive to work one day and then close the door down. What precipitated that?
We closed down and we bought this building here. And we moved out here.
Here at 5800, no, 95th, West 95th Street.
5600.
5600.
Right. Frank and I never even looked at the inside. I just counted the parking spaces. I think the kids looked at it and said they'd like to buy it. So we bought it. And we had a bunch of dentists in here. Before they sold it to us, they all fixed themselves up with cheap leases. So for 5 years, we lost money because they had leases very cheap. But I'm 8 minutes from my house. That's the most important thing.
So it soon got to
and
be...
Frank was 8 minutes from his
Yeah,
house.
so the developing business got big for you. The garment business was
That's right.
Now, I
nothing, so you
understand
just
you
say,
were-
let's close her down.
You were working, you'd already started the developing business and in the office at 1000 Broadway.
That's right. That's exactly right.
What did you do with all the machinery there, the sewing machines?
Well, we sold them all, actually. And there was not... We bought government surplus after the war. We made a lot of money doing that. And then Frank went over. Frank was stationed on the island of Guam. He was in the Navy. And the Navy gave everything on the island of Guam to the Chinese. Everything. And there was a guy from Fort Scott, Kansas by the name of Lon Massey. Lon Massey, we used to buy stuff with Lon Massey. We used to buy stuff with Frank Nelson. Nelson actually controlled the production of the helmets made in Japan for people on motorcycles. And Frank Nelson was a very close friend of Mr. Walmart. In fact, Frank Nelson had a heart attack down there, and he sent him home on his airplane. Sent him back to Kansas City on his airplane. And actually, that relationship, nobody could touch it because Frank Nelson got along with the big boss, and whatever he did, he always made money for him.
Funny how it works that way.
Yeah, that's right.
So, when you were in the garment business, now as you look at Kansas City, take out Vic-Gene, because when you
We were nothing.
when you finished doing your thing, then you went on to developing and real estate and owning buildings. But in Kansas City,
Went in the banking business. That was the best deal.
the banking business.
That's right.
Not
The-
so many complaints, huh? They didn't yell at you.
No, Frank,
But
Frank ran,
when
Frank
was-
ran the banks, and I ran the real estate.
When the apex of the garment business was in Kansas City, would have been 1955. I mean, up to 10 years after the war.
Probably it started down before then.
Okay, but
Because they were all buying, they were all sending this, whatever they wanted manufactured. Everybody had people in, first it was in Japan, then it became China, then it became the Philippines. Everybody had representatives over there, and they could always look, they could make it over there and ship it by air and still be cheaper than we were ever.
when did that begin, roughly? It's hard to say,
Hard.
but 5, 6, 7 years after the war, and then it became an avalanche, didn't it? And then it became obvious
Well,
to.
Gap became huge, and Limited became huge.
And so finally, when the plain writing was on the wall, then that's when the company started going down, downsizing, and ultimately selling out or just going out of business, didn't they?
They couldn't compete.
Did they just go out of
Well,
business?
you got a lot of little manufacturers in New York today, but they are specialty guys. They make special stuff, and you can't compete. There's no way you can compete. But compared to what they used to make, they probably are making less than 10% of what they used to make. And that's
Now-
a pure guess. Don't quote me on anything like that, because I don't know.
Now, I think you were starting to make some kind of connection that a lot of these relationships with companies in the Orient came about because of World War II, or
No,
because
no, I don't know anything
okay.
about it,
Because you were saying that this Frank Nelson and Lon Massey
Well,
were
well,
selling surplus.
Well, Lon Massey bought. He bought all of the hard goods that they had there, but they didn't have any roads. So they had to build a road to get the stuff shipped. Well, Frank went to work for a New York outfit that was buying the soft goods. And they said, okay, you come to work for us and work for us 6 months, and you can have 5 tons of whatever you want. Because there was so much. You had the summer uniforms. You had everything. They had everything there.
So as soon as they geared up over there and were starting manufacturing things cheaper, there were relationships between big customers and big buyers in the United States.
They took the stuff over that they wanted manufactured. They started designing themselves. They had a design team in the United States, and they'd take the stuff over there and have it
Sure,
made.
sure. And in your opinion, how soon was the handwriting on the wall regarding that before the companies finally said, we're out of business?
Look,
Depends on the company?
that's right.
Depends
We
on...
were changing anyway. We wanted out of the garment. The garment was a terrible business. You had to
How
start
did
over all the time. You had to start
So
over.
is it-
Every
it's fair to
season
say-
you started over.
Is it fair to say you did pretty well at it? On what you chose to do?
Wait a minute. We made enough to get started in other stuff.
Well, that's fair to say then. Now, were most of the garment manufacturers in Kansas City Jewish? And if so, what attracted Jewish people to garment manufacturing, or vice
I
versa?
have no idea.
You have no idea.
No idea.
Did you entertain doing other things? When you came back from the war,
Nope.
you never thought. Just,
I knew that I was going to be at Vic-Gene.
okay.
You were going to be what?
at Vic-Gene.
I was going to be at Vic-Gene.
How did Kansas City become such a major center for coats? Why here?
I have no idea, but it seemed like the coat manufacturers in Kansas City gave them good values, and they, depending on who it was, and you know, Slim Maker was a dress manufacturer.
Slim
That-
Maker?
Harry Levine just passed away. He was 98 years old or something like that, maybe a month or two ago. He was out at Village Shalom.
Mm-hmm.
I assumed that, otherwise they wouldn't be buying
Yeah,
from
that's
him.
as tough as the business was by your.
And the other
description.
thing, all of these Kansas City manufacturers had salesmen on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And they would go into the small towns and sell this guy 24 coats, different styles, this guy 24 coats. That's the way it worked. And if it sold good, then it was fine.
Did you have good cooperation?
Phillips Manufacturing Company was a dress manufacturer that did the same thing we did, only he did it on a little bit higher priced goods. And he did very well. Phil Zarlinski.
Zarlinski?
His wife lives right across the street from us. And Phil died probably 20 years ago.
Who's his wife? You said his wife lives.
His wife lives right across the street from us.
Oh, what's her first name?
I don't know.
Okay.
And they have one. They have a son that was a doctor that just passed away. I don't know what happened. He lived out on the West
I
Coast.
saw that.
And another son who is a cook. That was Rick's buddy. The two of them smoked pot together. I could kill them.
Were you a part of the Kansas City Garments Manufacturers Group at that time?
Yes.
The Kansas City
Mary
Apparel?
and Everett Corwin were the head of the Kansas City Garment Manufacturers.
Was that a pretty tight group? I mean,
Yes.
and the guys got along pretty well, and
And coat people did everything. You had very little to say. The coat people controlled it.
because they had the volume.
Yeah, and you know who Mel Mallon worked for, Maurice Coat Company, okay?
Now, you mentioned the Kansas City Apparel Association.
It should be garment. I think that's what it was called.
Okay.
Either Kansas City Apparel Association, I think that's what it was.
Who were the principals in Rose Wind Coats?
Merle Rose.
Merle Rose?
Merle Rose.
Is he or any of that
He
family?
was on East Penway,
Yes,
okay?
next to the Coke plant.
That's correct. That's
Is
where
he or the,
he manufactured a little higher price goods.
is, to the best of your knowledge, is he or a member of his family still living?
I think his son is a lawyer.
Leonard?
Well, what would be some final comments that you might have about your experiences in the garment business? Or if,
Wait a minute. The only thing, I look back on it and it was okay, but I really didn't like it.
you did well at it, but didn't mean you had to like it.
Well, because you're always under pressure. No sense in being under pressure all the time.
No matter what you did, it wasn't good enough.
Well, listen, and that's the way it is.
That's the way
But
it is.
Either you're feast or famine.
How did you find employees, and where did most of your employees come from?
My sister trained him.
Your sister trained them. Were they, did you have a lot of immigrant
No,
young people?
We had a lot of black folks, and the black folks were very good employees. They tried very hard, and they were fast learners, and they were happy to have a job.
So if you gave them good
And
training, they could
yeah,
produce.
and they loved my sister. There isn't anything they wouldn't do for her.
What was your sister's married name, or was she married?
Morgan, Rose Morgan.
Oh, sure, okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to
There's
make
a
sure.
lot of names that
That
get
was
thrown
that was
out.
not Frank. That was
Frank's mother.
Mother.
Frank's mother.
That's right.
Okay. See, while I'm thinking, asking
I can
questions
remember-
here.
I can remember going to St. Joseph Hospital when Frank was born. That sticks in my mind.
You were 3 years old?
Wait,
Can you remember
where-
that?
I remember, not only that, I was washing my hands for 2 hours before I left for the hospital so I could touch him.
And you and Frank were good buddies all his life, weren't you?
There's nobody closer than the two of us.
Did you have a lot of crosswords with Frank?
Once in a while you have an
Sure.
argument, but
Of course. But you were always pretty much unanimous about everything that you
there's no question about
that you did. That's terrific. Do you have another question or two?
Where was St. Joseph Hospital at the time?
It was at
Linwood and Prospect
Glenwood and Prospect.
Okay.
on the northwest corner.
And we lived at 1734 Prospect, so all I had to do was get on the bus and go out south.
1734 Prospect. And you always lived in Missouri? Do you still?
Until we moved to 7200 Jarbo before I went into service. My dad had passed away,
7220.
100
Jarbo.
My sister Rose bought the house. My mom was alive, and that's where I lived until I went into service. Okay, I'm all through.
Okay, what do you think is the most important aspect of the garment manufacturing to focus on in the book?
You
If
know,
you
it
were
was,
writing-
it was just an era that came and went.
It was good while it lasted. Can it ever be
No, he
resurrected
didn't.
again?
I don't think you thought it was so
No,
good.
I don't mean, no,
No.
I mean it was profitable for the people who availed themselves
But
of it.
I enjoyed it when, you know, when something is really selling really good, you really enjoy it. And that's the part, but then you have to deliver. And that's the part that when it gets tough.
But Frank, you really enjoyed interacting with the buyers group in New York and the top people at Penneys and Gimbel's and
Well,
Macy's,
I
didn't
never,
you?
I never saw the top people at Penneys or Gimbel's. All I saw were the buyers.
But you enjoyed the mental process of dealing with them and getting them to buy from you, didn't you?
Okay, I'm all through.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.